Hey, David.
Good evening. Looks like our agenda's not too long tonight.
No, I wasn't really sure what else we needed to deal with. The biggest thing was just getting a deadline. The select board wanted us to talk about it and just come up with something reasonable.
You guys just met last Monday, right?
Monday, yeah, just a few days ago.
So they kind of want us to bring this to a head.
Well, they want to adjust the charge so it actually, it's expired. So
Yeah.
have it formally extended, but want some idea of when this will end. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But they approved the paper version of the survey, so that'll be happening soon.
The guy that was texting us or during our meeting from Belfast sounded like he had a lot of knowledge.
A ton, yeah.
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 Be curious to learn more about what they've been doing in Belfast.
Yeah, at our next meeting, I'll invite him. He said he would love to. Doug something. He'd love to join. Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing? Hey, I just want to let you know, I just got an email from Dan Sullivan, and he didn't receive the link, but the invite. But I just sent him the one that I got, which should work.
I am here.
Oh, Dan, you're there.
Yep.
Where, do I see you?
I don't know. Well, maybe not. Probably might be a blessing if you don't.
Actually, you're listed under my name. There you go.
Yeah, I was confused by that.
We got two mics.
Yeah, sorry.
That's my pseudonym.
Yeah, I think that's the best we're going to do tonight, though.
That works.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got on.
All right, everyone's filtering in quickly.
Good honor.
Hi, George.
Good evening, all.
How we doing?
Doing well, thank you.
No. Got a little taste of summer today.
All too brief.
I had about 50 turkeys in my yard today. They're definitely overpopulated.
Yeah, there are a lot of birds. They are, but yeah, we've got a couple families groups that just make the circle through us, and they really like our wood pile. They just like to get on top of the stacked wood and look for things and look out. Yeah.
Okay, let's wait one more minute. Hi, Gina.
Hi there.
Yeah, there. Stephen, how are you?
Everybody.
Just waiting till 7:01. Okay, why don't we start now? I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, Stephen, to your first meeting. Why don't we start with public comment? I'm looking at the chat right now. I don't have any public comment that came to me. Does anyone have? Has the public reached out to anyone here in the last 2 weeks that they want to share?
No.
Not me.
Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. So, Mike, you didn't send those out, right?
Yeah.
No, I got it. I'd motion to accept the minutes.
Yeah, I did around an hour and a half ago. I mean, very last minute. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I don't see them.
I got mine.
Oh, I got
I think
mine.
I thought I clicked your name, Josh. I'm sorry if I didn't. Hi, Cheryl.
Let's see.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi.
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
And I'll second.
I second
Okay.
it.
All
Okay,
right,
third.
motion and seconded by George. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. David, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Mike, how do you vote?
Yes,
Jordan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Stephen, how do you vote?
I abstain.
Okay, Cheryl, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Gina, how do you vote?
Yes.
George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and I abstain because I did not see them. It is approved. Great. Okay, let's see. Well, let's do a little introduction and discussion with the new broadband committee members quickly. Stephen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stephen Koltai. I'm very excited to be part of this group and looking forward to working together.
Great. And Cheryl.
Hi. I'm also very excited and looking forward to seeing what we can do to get some affordable internet for Lincolnville.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for our new members?
Oh, but thanks for joining.
yes, indeed. Yeah.
Welcome aboard.
Great. So I neglected to add Dan onto the agenda. So why don't we jump there? Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Dan Sullivan. I live in Cooper, Maine. I'm president of the Down East Broadband Utility, which we built a fiber to the home network in Calais and Baileyville. I was an IT guy for 25 years at the Woodland Pulp Mill in St. Croix Tissue. Retired there from 2018. I do a outside consulting business now, and my wife and I also have a wood oven pizza business that up until this year was doing quite well, but we unfortunately were not out on the road due to obvious reasons. We have the Calais and Baileyville network, DBU, is up and running. It's about 98% complete. We have 2 outlying areas that were the furthest out, miles to get to a home type setup that they're now constructing, which we expect to be done in probably the next month and a half.
Great. Okay.
What are this? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I was just curious. Yeah, I was curious about just this service that you guys have. There's different levels of what's the max speed and how, all that good stuff.
Yep, I can give you a quick rundown on that. It's a fiber network, so it's a symmetrical connection, same speeds up and down. It goes anywhere from 100 up to a gig. One of the ISPs we have now is looking at a 10 gig ring, so it could go higher than that. But right now, the base package that we're selling we're not selling. We're a dark fiber network, and I'll explain that later if you'd like me to give you more detail on this, exactly how it's been built. But one of the ISPs is providing a 100 by 100 connection for $59 a month.
So we would actually, we'd love to hear the details, the technical details of it being a dark fiber network and what that means.
Yeah, when this all started back in 2015, I was the IT director at the mill, and the economic development director for Calais and Baileyville came to my office and was looking for ideas for economic development. So I had mentioned I had been working on trying to get Maine on fiber only networks since 2009. I've been very active in Augusta and any place I possibly could get where someone would listen to me trying to get fiber networks. And when she came to me thinking that, what could we do for this area? I said, why don't you try to get a decent broadband setup going? So fast forward, she started a ball rolling and it took right off. We did a survey in both towns. We put up articles in the local paper. We put posters out. We had meetings. I did, speaking engagements with the Chamber of Commerce and Lions clubs and all that kind of stuff to try to explain what exactly a fiber to the home network was. And the towns they decided that, yeah, they wanted to go forward with this. So we came up with, the towns came up with $15,000 to do a feasibility study, which we hired Pioneer Broadband to go out and look and see if this was financially feasible. You know, could this actually work considering our population density, our geographic, you know, we're rural Maine, as everybody knows, we're all kind of spread out. So we wanted to make sure that before we went to the actual voters or the taxpayers, that we knew what we were doing, if this could actually work. So anyway, it came back and they said, yeah, they saw this as a viable thing. So the next step was these two towns said, okay, we're going to pay to have an engineering study done. And that was $45,000. And then we finally got a detailed engineering study as to exactly what it would cost to build this network. That was right down to how much fiber we would need, how much strand support cables, the communication huts, of which we've got 4. Every single aspect of this was nailed down. So we could then go to the towns and say, do you want to move forward with this? So we did. And the way this system works is we didn't actually ask the town taxpayers for tax dollars. So what the towns agreed to is that they agreed to back loans to a bank to build the network. And then in the event that Down East Broadband Utility, the group that is actually administering this, if we were to fail, if we couldn't get enough take rate, and if it just didn't take off, then the towns would pay the notes. But if it does take off, which it is taking off, it gets paid for by the subscribers. So the taxpayers are guaranteeing the note, but they're not actually seeing any changes to their tax bills. And because it's the first municipal network in the state of Maine. That's something we pulled off. That, you know, we did. There was a lot of regulatory work. There was a lot of things we had to talk about in Augusta and all that kind of stuff. But we eventually were able to get the ruling that said we were able to create this municipal broadband network that's owned by the citizens of Calais and Baileyville. And that was one of our major selling points, was that this broadband network that you're paying for to use is actually benefiting your town. It's not going to a Spectrum or a Consolidated who have boards that are outside the state, not going to outside stockholders. This whole setup is being reinvested in your town.
Well, I have a question pertaining to that very quickly.
Sure.
Just a clarification, because I understand the concept of the municipality. Would the ownership then of the dark fiber then fall under the municipality, or would each individual town have, I mean, by proxy, do they have ownership by being part of this municipality? That's where I could use just a tiny bit of clarification.
Yes. What happens is that the two towns, we've formed what's called an interlocal agreement. That is, we had our lawyers draw up, and it tells the two towns that they're working together with the Down East Broadband Board to basically administer the network, to control the networks for each town. And we've, I don't know if that answers your question.
So Jordan, it's like our transfer station. That's a interlocal agreement between our 4 towns.
Yeah.
With board members
Dan,
from each
Dan,
select board.
Is the dark fiber owned by the utility? And I assume it's like a nonprofit corporation or something like that?
Yes, we're a 501(c)(3). It's a nonprofit. And yes, the towns of Baileyville and Calais own the actual physical infrastructure.
So yeah, that's what I was curious. Like, if for some reason the municipality should dissolve, which I don't know why that would, just where the ownership of the actual physical infrastructure would lie.
The
It would
nonprofit.
go back to the towns.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So just for the new members, this idea of dark fiber, it's kind of the fiber itself, and then you have to find service providers to provide the connection. So Dan, how have you done, like who's come on to the dark fiber and how's all that gone? This is an open system, so I assume you've let people bid
We've been in operation now a little over 2 months. And we've got one provider right now. We're in discussions with 2 others, but we have one provider right now who is now setting up connections. And what it basically, the open access dark fiber network is that these two towns own the physical infrastructure. But as you just mentioned, it's not lit. There's no signal in it. That comes from when the ISPs come on board. So Pioneer Broadband is our first ISP. And the way it works is that in each town, we have 2 communication huts. These are buildings that are about, 10 by 30. They sit next to each other. They're all, they got backup air conditioning and power supplies, all that kind of stuff. Well, DBUs, our fiber comes into our building. The next building is we lease out space to the ISP. So Pioneer comes in and they lease rack space from us, which is another revenue stream, where they put their equipment. When a customer, on Swan Street in Calais wants to have, broadband, they call up Pioneer. Pioneer calls us, and our network operator goes into our side of the communication hut and makes the connection over to the Pioneer's, the other hut. And that's where they connect to their equipment, which then gets the customer to the internet.
So we have a funny twist, because I assume in your area you had little or no broadband. Lincolnville does have a majority of the households who have it through LCI, but the indications are that people are largely unhappy with that. And then a good amount of the town doesn't have it, and it's been very slow to expand. So
What is
any
LCI?
thoughts on, excuse me?
What is LCI?
Used to be Lincolnville Telephone. I don't know what LCI stands for now.
Is it a
Anybody know?
cable system?
It's
Fiber
a
optic.
It's Lincolnville Communications. It's they do telephone and internet.
So it's
cable.
like Spectrum or
Yeah,
It
it's
is,
an
but just
incumbent.
like a small one.
Yeah, like a lousy version of it.
well, to answer your question, in Calais and Baileyville, Spectrum is ubiquitous. It's in everywhere in those 2 towns. It's
Okay.
not in the outlying areas, but in the general downtown areas of both Calais and Baileyville, there's plenty of Spectrum cable and there's plenty of Consolidated Communications DSL.
But no
We
fiber.
were able to make this fly because of, I think, that young woman there mentioned a second ago that the service is terrible.
Did any of
Did
the
you have
incumbents
fiber?
offer fiber optic?
No. Well, let me backtrack on that a second. You can get fiber optic. When I was the IT director at the mill, they would come to the, and they did come to the mill, but it was $2,500 a month. You get a 1 gig connection
God,
at the
okay.
mill. So, a customer, even though you're sitting along the 3-ring binder middle mile network and it's 12 feet outside your house, you still can't connect to it because the providers won't bring it to you.
Okay. So just so everyone is aware, Islesboro has a similar system, but instead of having dark fiber, Islesboro manages their municipal system themselves. GWI does the actual groundwork, but Islesboro is the one that runs it. So
Yep.
Similar but different in that sense. Any other questions?
Yeah, Dan, I'm interested in how y'all sold this to the people of Calais and Baileyville. How difficult the job was. I listened to just part, I'm afraid, of a podcast that you did with the organization. I can't remember, but you probably a couple of years ago you did. Anyway, and you mentioned that what you have to have going for you is a cheerleader, a person, an advocate, someone who really believes,
Absolutely.
or who's drunk the Kool-Aid, perhaps. And anyway, Calais, Baileyville, you guys are very different than Lincolnville in the sense that you're kind of a metropolis almost, and on the border. And I mean, you have businesses. We have businesses, but we don't have a retail section or anything like that,
Well, to that, I was the dog with the bone in our area as far as
Okay.
You're right. You have to have an advocate, and this kind of stuff can be done, but it's a relentless task, and you have to go in a lot of different directions. Calais and Baileyville, they have the major employer there is Woodland Pulp, which is in Baileyville.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's a Walmart in Calais, but we have a terrible retail sector. There's the downtown areas of Calais are almost vacant. There is no downtown area of Baileyville.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we rely a lot on the mill. That is the major employer here. But like a lot of places in Maine, we rely a lot on the small businesses.
Right.
These are people working out of their homes, their garages, that they need to participate in the global economy, and broadband was a huge piece of that. So we were able to, it was a pretty, I would say it was a pretty easy sell. It was like, because Spectrum's service was so terrible and Consolidated's was worse, it's like people were just begging for something better. And even if nothing else, to be less expensive.
Yeah,
The
I
average
mean,
cable bill here is $200 and up.
yeah. From a fiscal standpoint, the logic is it's irrefutable. I mean, to fight against this, it's just insane. We can either own something and have good service, or we can pay through the nose and get no service at all.
Exactly.
It's not really a choice to me.
Steven, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, Dan, this is so super interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about the financing? What was the total cost? And you did mention that the towns agreed to guarantee the loans. Was the total cost borne by debt, or what did the financing stack look like?
Okay, what we did is, when it came down to the cost of the network, was for both towns was 3.4 million. That's what it would cost to construct it. That was the physical infrastructure, as well as the regulatory work, the insurance, the leasing of telephone poles, the whole 9 yards came to 3.4 million. Callis picked up 1.9 of that, and Baileyville 1.5. That was proportionate to the sizes of the towns. What we've done is, and we're still operating under right now, we put out a request, an RFP, to 4 local banks, and 4 of them came back, and they were over the top excited to compete for this loan. And we picked a local bank the first, and we secured a line of credit, which we're still operating under. So as we built the network, we draw down funds from the line of credit, and next March, we're going to renegotiate that line of credit, and we're going to look at depending on what the rates are, we're going to look at a 20, 25, or a 30-year municipal loan, so that it'll be a fixed setup, not a line of credit anymore. So the taxpayers, as long as, subscribers buy the network, which to the previous gentleman, I'm sorry I didn't get your name, but mentioned that, this local ownership is a huge plus. I mean, it makes so much sense. If the ISPs would have done this at a reasonable rate, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And just to give you a backdrop here, when we first started this, the first thing we did is we went to Time Warner, then it's Spectrum now. We went to Consolidated, and we said, listen, we think we can get some taxpayer dollars to help you expand and build a fiber network in these 2 towns. Will you do it? And they both said no. They refused it. So when we came back to us, we said, okay, well, if they won't do it, then we're going to do it. And I will add, I've been at this for a very long time, and you can tell me to shut up because I'll go on forever. But I have dealt with this since 2009. And I will tell you, I've been in the legislature, I've been on legislative committees, I've met with governors, senators, the whole 9 yards. And one of the biggest problems is that the ISPs in this state and other states have got lawmakers' ears. And when they think about building broadband or taking care of broadband needs, they go to the people that do it. They don't look at an IT guy in Baileyville, Maine, and think he knows better than Spectrum. But I would be up there yelling for fiber-only networks since 2009 and getting nowhere with it.
Well, the thing that we're fortunate to have is that we're a small populated state. So we're not like in other states where it's actually worked into legislation and into regulation that Spectrum, where these large companies can be the only providers. So all we have to do is build out. We don't have to fight the monstrosity of these large cable communication companies coming and spending millions of dollars lobbying against it. So, I mean, the time is to act now while we're protected. I mean, it's really, people need to understand this too.
Maine has in their constitution, they have what's called home rule, which is if a service is not being provided And the citizens of a particular town have the right to provide that service themselves. And that's to your point. There's 23 states in this nation where it's against the law for anybody other than an existing ISP to provide broadband. Maine is not one of them. But 23 states can't even begin to start this process.
Wow. So, Dan, our LCI, Lincolnville Telephone, has, I don't know, 47 miles of fiber running through Lincolnville right now. If a person were to sign up with them right now, I think it's $70 a month for 50 down and 10 up. I'm currently on a 3-year contract where I'm paying $105 for 20 up, 20 down.
Yeah.
And so in a situation like this, where we have an incumbent who wants to expand, I mean, they've told us, even if the town doesn't help at all, they want to have fiber running past every home in Lincolnville in the next 4 years. What would your advice be to us? Should we just support them? Do you think we should strongly consider laying dark fiber paid for or, backed by the taxpayers?
My take, if they've already got a fiber network, they're not running fiber to individual homes yet though, right?
No,
They
they're not.
will.
You have to pay for that last.
Right.
That
If they're
last,
not giving you a symmetrical connection, the same up and down, you're not getting fiber. They're passing that over copper.
No. We do have fiber to the home, but it is not asymmetrical.
Yeah.
Really?
I'm grandfathered at 20 up, 20 down, but for whatever reason, they're not offering symmetrical anymore.
Let me give you some current information. My fiber was turned on 12 hours after I got named to this wonderful committee, which was, I know, just a coincidence. But I paid $2,000 2.5 months ago to be connected by LCI the 670 feet from Route 235 to my home. I live on Route 235, so it's down my driveway. That was $2,000, which was reduced from $3,500 as a special favor because I had been making a lot of noise, and also because they realized that they actually already had fiber on the road that is my property line. So I made the argument to me, I had a surveyor here, and I said, it is because I got some national numbers on the cost of FTTH. And I said, it is mathematically impossible that it's $3,400 for you to build the 670 feet. So eventually we got it down to 2,000. It was connected 24 hours ago. My monthly rate is $105.
Okay.
It's for 100 down and 30 up. I've been measuring my speeds every couple of hours since I got it. My top speed has been 36 down and 16 up, which to me is like, flying to Mars, since my previous speed was 1.2, which is what I've been living with since then. So I'm, elated. And so it's $105 with a minimum 3-year contract, by the way, which I've heard is not standard practice and is not considered a fair business practice. So to answer the question, Lincolnville Communications absolutely is here, and it leads to my next question, which is they are determined to provide fiber as soon as they have no other choice but to provide fiber.
Right.
And if we'll get state funds for them as well.
In other words, when it gets to the point that they can no longer delay, then they will provide fiber. And my question, and they'll provide it on terms that generate a 20% ROI, which is the average private internet provider ROI, as opposed to a utility ROI, which is about 5%. So their metrics are very different than a municipally owned, right? Just like a municipally owned water system has very different metrics. And my question to you, Dan, is if we do the work that you have done for so long, which I find extremely impressive and very intimidating. What's to prevent them from coming in at the last minute and saying, oh, okay, we'll just do it?
That's always we thought that with Spectrum. And I just when I listened to your conversation about the fiber connection to your home, what that tells me is that Lincolnville doesn't have enough backhaul on the other end of the network, getting out to the major network to be able to sell, to have a fiber connection to someone's home and not have it symmetrical in my mind, makes no sense. I mean, right now, the upload speeds have become as important as the download speeds.
Of course.
I mean, there's no doubt about that anymore.
Thank you.
So as far as when we built this in Calais and Baileyville, we expected Spectrum in particular, Consolidated, I think they're on the ropes anyway, but Spectrum, we expected some kind of pushback from them. And what they did was really interesting. It happened at one of our board meetings. They sent next day air FedEx letters to all the town fathers and the mayors and the city councilmen, the whole works, promising that better broadband was coming to Calais and Baileyville. And they were throwing out these numbers that were really cheap. And these guys looked at these envelopes and they ripped them up and threw in the garbage and said, we've heard that before. So I think your Lincolnville question, I don't know Lincolnville at all, but it sounds like that they don't have the financial backing, which is understandable, and they need the ROI that you're talking about. So for them to come around and come at you full steam would be difficult. It would be,
and I'd like,
one thing I would like to add, and I'll shut up for a second, is that the idea that it's owned by the municipality, to me, is like, that's the overriding piece to this. Because you control, within reason, pretty much how this is going to play out. You're not subject to what happens in a boardroom that you're not in. And in our case, let me give you a quick example. We've just taken on another town has voted, Alexander, which is right next to Baileyville. They put this out. I spoke with them for about a year and a half, and that just got passed a couple of weeks ago, that they're now going to join DBU, and they're going to put their own fiber to the home network, joining our network, joining our piece, because, and the overriding thing was that the townspeople would own the network.
But to that point, our neighboring towns, Camden and Rockport, are exploring laying dark fiber and are very open to other towns joining them as well. So similar idea, and the chair of the broadband task force told us at our last meeting that the towns don't even need to be physically bordering each other. So
nope. Yep.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we've been approached since Alexander joined us. I have been approached by, I would say, no less than 25 towns and cities across the state of Maine.
Really
want to connect. And this is my fourth Zoom call in the last 5 days.
Incredible.
Could you talk a little bit about how you're able to control quality? Even though we have a lot of fiber, our survey results expressed a lot of unhappiness from the whole, I think it was from the people who have DSL and people who have fiber. So when you bring on ISPs, how do you set standards, and how do you control them once you get them on your dark fiber? How do you make sure that they respond to the users?
Well, it's at the beginning, so we haven't really had any problems with that yet. We have a network operator, and we have our local boards, and I'm very connected to the ISP we've got. So and I am with him constantly about, I want him to ratchet up signing people up, because we've got a 4-week delay right now. That's the backlog trying to connect to us. So I will say that so far that the connections that they've put in place, it's been over the top successful. We've had 0 complaints. Well, one of the nice things about fiber is that it is once it's up and running, as long as the equipment is operating, it's very stable. It's much more stable than your consolidated DSL or your cable systems. they haven't been able to max out speeds on fiber yet. So 100 by 100 will cover an awful lot of people what they want to do, more so than what they want to do.
Jordan,
So we
did
haven't
you
hit
have
the
a question?
quality issue yet.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to speak to about the problem. I mean, the inherent problem here is the fact that there is no fiber infrastructure. That's why it like makes my skin crawl every time I hear how much fiber we have in Lincolnville. It's a misnomer. It's a falsehood. We don't have fiber. If we had fiber, there would be a certain type of service that comes along with it. So it gets my hackles up when I hear that. It's because you can't have fiber and then get 20 megabits down, and then 8 or whatever it is up. It's impossible. It's like saying I have a Ferrari, but it only goes 20 miles an hour.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It's neutered fiber. Yeah.
Yeah.
To the quality issue too, what we did in Calais and Baileyville is we built what's called a home run network, which means that every residence and every business in these two towns has a dedicated fiber to their house. They're not going through a splitter, where a lot of fiber networks, they're designed, they'll go 1 to 32. They'll bring up a single fiber to a box, then they'll split it into 32 connections. We wanted to make sure that we could go to the people of this town and say, this network is going to be viable 100 plus years from now. So the fact that there's a dedicated piece of glass going to every person that signs onto this network means that as this fiber stuff gets crazier and crazier, which is going to, we just replace the lasers on each end in those huts. The glass that's sitting on the poles, you don't have to touch them ever again unless they get knocked down by a tree or whatever. But the infrastructure is pretty stable, and the quality end comes in to the previous guy's comment is Pioneer doesn't offer an asymmetrical connection. We're not even talking. Somebody said the word asymmetrical to me, I'd say you can leave now.
Yeah.
Which of the banks did you speak with? You mentioned one. What are the other 3 banks, local banks you dealt with?
We dealt with Camden National, and we dealt with Machias Savings. Let's see, it was the First, Camden, Machias, and Bangor Savings.
Okay, so 2 of those are resident here. Did you deal with them just on the local level?
The thing we wanted to do, and we've been pretty good at this, is we spend our dollars as locally as possible. And we really wanted a local bank. And the banks up here, I'm not sure what they're like in Lincolnville, but they are very locally centered. Machias Savings is certainly one of our biggest supporters, even though we didn't go with them. The First is certainly as well. When we hired our network operator, he's a local electrical contractor who was able to take on the additional job as the network operator. So by keeping the funds in Calais and Baileyville with the spending, that was another plus that, that the taxpayer, obviously the townspeople liked.
Just in terms of the prep that you did, one of the things we're in the midst of is polling our citizens.
Yep.
Did you go through a similar experience, and what kind of response did you get?
We did a survey, and surveys are a little rough because not everybody responds. You don't get a lot of, but I can't remember the amount we got back, but I know that 97% of the stuff we did get back said yes. When we went to the respective town meetings to have them approve it, there was, in the very first meeting we had in Calais, there was a guy standing behind me who happened to be the IT guy at a local school. And he got up saying this was ridiculous, that fiber was the worst thing you could put out there, and that it was expensive, and that it was going to break down all the time. And I'm sitting in front of him going, what is the matter with this? I turned around and I said, I've been the IT director for 20 years. I said, we've had fiber and it's never gone down. What are you talking about? But it was misinformation. But that was the only negative we got, was that first meeting. And then after that, when it came time for a vote, it was unanimous all the way across the board.
Wow.
Thank you.
So we were lucky.
Well, I've
Any
got
other
a question.
questions?
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, I've got a question, and it's just for the group. How long do you think it will be until the FCC definition of broadband 25.3 just becomes so inadequate that people get fed up with it? That is.
It's already happened. It
Well,
happened.
well, well, the reason I asked that, it hasn't happened in my life yet because I don't need it, right? But if I did, but I was one, at what point do you need something far beyond 25.3, which is
Now.
all we're being offered from LCI, basically?
You need it now.
That's what, tell me why, please.
The FCC, they are very, very controlled, for lack of a
Oh,
better
I
word,
understand.
by
I
the
understand
ISPs
that.
down in Washington. They're telling them which way that they're telling them the standards.
Oh, I'm
In
sure.
my
I'm sure.
opinion, the FCC standard is always been inadequate.
Yeah.
It's never been even close to right.
Can I give one example, Mike?
please.
That'll
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so one broad reaching way. Just the way that telecommunications has changed, just telephone-based communications has gone predominantly digital in the country. So that means, do you know how that's being delivered? Through internet connections. So when you have weak internet connections, that means that people who don't have landlines, who are relying on digital connections, have terrible, terrible connections. So that's just one way of communicating that's extremely important, that is internet-based. That's not even taking in account, like when I do business, that I have to go through transactions that are through the internet. And the more layers of communication you have through the kind of internet we have now, the more bogged down it gets and the worse it functions. So that's why it's bad. It's not just one thing that you're using. It's the fact that so many things are being used at once that demand an internet connection, that if you don't have a system that can handle that, it goes to shit.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. It just seems to me that in terms of the persuasion aspect for people to spend a lot of money or to stand behind a loan, a sizable loan, you have to get beyond the semantics of broadband, as it's sufficient now. People can say, well, we already have broadband, even though it's 25.3. They don't, and they may be happy with that because it's defined as broadband. And so I'm wondering what the arguments are for against 25.3.
I would just say for Lincolnville, it's reliability, but forget the speeds. I mean, looking at the survey results so far, it's not reliable. It goes down all the time.
And most people can't even get the 25. That's what's also so frustrating. We see, even just from the surveys, 60% of people in Lincolnville, including me, can only get 8. So it's impossible to even get the worst recommended connection now. And we talk about infrastructure being able to be upgraded in the future. We don't even have that. So by the time we get another worst, we're not going to be able to upgrade to what there is. And, we talk about that 20% ROI. I think it's much higher than that, because the infrastructure that they're charging us now $100 a month for was implemented decades ago. So they are making profit upon profit upon profit. So I'm sorry.
I would say too, this has become a necessary service. It's like, imagine if your electricity ran like your broadband ran. Well, your refrigerator's not going to cool tonight because somebody else is cooling theirs.
Yeah. We lose power for 30 minutes and people lose their mind.
This conversation is, I know I was on a conference call with Angus King last week, and because I've known him for a while, and he's asked me about this he wants to know about this municipal network. And there's a lot of push, I'm not getting political one way or the other here. Just saying there's a lot of push right now to take care of this problem. And municipal networks is a way to do it. One that benefits the actual customers, the taxpayers in those towns, instead of, your sewer bill it takes care of your sewer, right? It doesn't take care of some company out in Kansas who makes money off you flushing the toilet. I said, this is a necessary service that just should be there.
So Dan, the beginning to end time since you began the initiative in your towns to today is how many years?
Our first thought was in 2015. That's when we first thought about it. The actual physical, not the actual building, but the actual making things move was in 2016. And we signed on our first customers in 2019. So the actual network build took 2 years.
The first expenditure for your consultants, was that in 16?
Yes.
Yeah, this takes time. I mean, this is not something that,
That's the unfortunate side. It does take some time.
But we'd be waiting 4 years just to get the worst service anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd rather wait 4 years and get top tier stuff.
Well, you know, one thing I would tell you about fiber networks, and I have been, like I said, been at this a while. I will take this argument to any person. I don't care how technologically advanced they are. I will take this argument to them, and you tell me how anything other than a fiber to the home network is going to benefit me. You give me a different technology that's better than that, and I'll be quiet. It isn't out there, and it's not going to be there for quite a while. Unless
you
I don't know what
mentioned
the next
that,
one's going to be.
that on your network, every home gets a strand of fiber. Is that not common with a for-profit utility?
Correct.
That's
They're
what
using-
Verizon does that, doesn't it?
Well, I think what it's a relatively new, but there's this wave division multiplexing where they can take a single glass fiber and split the color spectrum, so they can get multiple connections across that single connection.
Mhm.
So from a cost
Yeah, I wasn't
perspective,
aware I wasn't aware they were using splitters.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's a common network build is 1 to 32. I don't know what Verizon's doing. I'm not sure of there, but I would say for a for-profit company, I would bet that they would limit their capital investments in order to maximize their profit.
Hmm.
And the problem with that is reduce theoretical bandwidth. Is that
Right.
okay?
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that we could go to the people that were paying for this. Well, the subscribers are paying for it, but to be able to tell them that you had the absolute best that's out there right now.
Mhm.
You can't get any better than what you've got right in Calais and Baileyville, and they bought it.
And
I wish
you
I
said-
lived there.
And you said the lifespan of fiber is pretty much no one even knows.
They haven't even begun to. There was a project done in Holland that they were able to transmit. It was like they only went a mile, and it was across standard classical Corning fiber, but they were able to push the Library Congress in less than 1/10 of a second.
Mhm.
And it was only a
It's
short
a small,
distance.
it's a small library.
Yeah. There's still a lot of data that they can push that they haven't been able to flood them yet.
Right.
When I first went on this, to give you a quick story here, I went to a group of people in Vermont that they were building their first fiber network. That was back in 2010. And these private investors had enough money to build 1 mile. They wanted to build this 1 mile and show people what it was. So they built the mile and people liked it and they kept building and building. So I went over and met with them, and they asked the private individuals there if they would take a loan on their homes, a low interest loan. And they would guarantee them that this didn't work out. They would give them 7% on their money. They'd get it back. So they're now in, I think, 45 towns. This is from 2010 and up. But one of the examples he told me about is they went down to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, in Chattanooga, the electrical co-op down there decided, probably 10 years ago, that they were going to put a smart grid fiber to the home network in Chattanooga. They did it across the entire city. It was basically for the electrical system to do smart grid technology and all that kind of stuff. But they realized when they're laying fiber, let's do broadband as well. So they now have broadband across Chattanooga. Well, this group from Vermont went down to Chattanooga to talk to them. And they were giving them a demonstration on how fiber worked. And they went to this concert hall, and they had a violinist in Chattanooga and another one in New York City. And they were playing a piece together. And music, latency in music is very apparent. If you don't have it right, you miss it. And they were telling me that, Danny, it was amazing. They would have thought these people were in the same room. And after that, they had these ballet dancers come out on the stage. So they're watching the ballet dancers and they're singing and the violins are playing. And then all of a sudden, 3 of the ballet dancers disappeared. And the lights come up and they said, what happened to that? It was a virtual connection to New York City. They weren't even human beings. And said, we were sitting in the room, Danny, you would not have known the difference. And that was all transmitted off, super fast lasers across a fiber connection. That's very advanced of what can happen. But in our levels. We're nowhere near that. That's just an example of how we're nowhere near maximizing this out.
Right. So my question was actually the longevity of the physical fiber. What is the estimate? What's the
Okay.
estimated life of that?
Well, I don't know if I have an exact number in that. I can tell you that a fiber cable strung between two telephone poles takes about it's about 7,000 pounds of pressure, where a copper cable takes 17,000 pounds of pressure. So there's not a lot physical that can happen to it unless it gets hit by a car or something knocks it.
Yeah,
I think
wow.
they've been around. Fiber's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Telecommunications
I mean,
has been using it forever.
Connects the continents, right? Undersea
Correct.
cables.
Yeah,
Yep.
undersea cables.
Yep,
are fiber.
undersea cables. That's one of the things with our network, which is just geographically, we're lucky because we sit close to Canada. We have a redundant ring that goes through Canada as well as Boston. So if Boston goes down, we route our traffic through Canada. Canada goes down, we route it through Boston.
Yeah.
So we're able to keep that's another quality piece, I guess, we're able to keep the service up. Spectrum hasn't been able to do that.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one, which is whether you've heard of anything that we haven't heard of, like at the state level. I know there's a lot of grants and things like that, but it's amazing to me that all the towns are doing what you've done, what we're doing, but they're doing it on their own. Is there anything out there where, the state's going to come forward with something more comprehensive to support these?
I would make a connection to the Connect Me Authority, which has been in Maine for years. And their previous director I'm glad he's no longer the director. The one who's there now, Peggy Schaefer, she is top notch. She is, if you want to I can send you guys her email address. They just got $15 million in that latest bond, which they're going to earmark that money. It's going to come through the Connect Me Authority, through Peggy. And you possibly could tap into that for survey money, engineering studies. They're trying to find, in the past, Connect Me gave away millions of your dollars to private companies to build DSL networks, to build cable networks.
Yeah.
And they finally realized that this is ridiculous. We're just wasting money here. We're not building something that's going to be around for a while. So I think the Connect Me Authority is now shifted towards doing more engineering studies, more helping towns like yourself be able to finance some of this stuff, because to go to taxpayers and say we need $45,000 to check this out, that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do it. And I think I know Peggy certainly understands that. And it looks like the state of Maine is finally getting their act in gear, that they're going to channel the funds coming into the state, whether it's from outside agencies or USDA or whatever, through Connect Me. So they got a central place for it. So that's where I would go.
I just wanted to add one point. I totally agree. I've spoken to Peggy Schaefer actually for research I'm doing on something else, and she was very interested in helping. I've also spoken, which probably wasn't available to you, Dan, geographically where you are, but the Island Institute also now has both a fund and kind of a help desk. Kendra Jo Grindle runs that and is extremely knowledgeable. And of course, they're in Rockland. And they view internet for their communities, which are the coastal and island communities of Maine, to be the second most important issue on the agenda after fishing. So they're also, and they have some funding. So they're also a place, if we haven't gone, we could at least talk to.
We've been talking to her.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, and she's been very helpful, and there's money available if we take her up.
Exactly. Great. Wonderful.
I think the needle has finally begun to move towards building, more sustainable networks in Maine. It's unfortunate that, like you just mentioned, that we all have to be doing this on our own instead of not a coordinated effort to just go, like we did with electricity in the 30s. They just put wire on a pole, and next thing you know, you had juice. That's all this is a cable on a pole.
Yeah. That's
Be a staple gun.
Well said. All right. Do we have anything else for Dan?
That was very helpful, Dan.
Yes, thanks so much.
Right.
Well, you're very
Thank you
welcome.
so
If
much.
there's anybody wants any more information or you want any more details, I could send you copies of our interlocal agreement if that would be any help, or anything that you want from us. We're big proponents of trying to see this across the whole state.
Interlocal
Copies
agreement, that would be great to see.
Okay, yep, I can send that off to you.
Mike, did you want to say something quickly?
Yeah, how close does the town have to be to Callis to hook up with the DBU?
That's a good question, because I asked that of our lawyers here about a month ago. And as long as you're in close proximity to Three Ring Binder, the middle mile network,
Yeah,
you could be on DBU.
Wow.
okay.
So
yeah,
Belfast
okay,
could
right.
be on DBU.
So-
Bangor
so-
could be on DBU.
Right, so, yeah, if we could tap into that sucker, we could work with you.
Right. So one of the reasons that Alexander jumped on board was because we did a lot of the groundwork. We did a lot of the regulatory stuff, insurance and all that other stuff that Alexander didn't have to do. So when they came and asked us if they could join the board, we got together and said, well, we have to have a formula here. How are we going to do this? So we decided that any town that wants to jump on DBU we're going to charge whatever your network cost is. If it costs $500,000 to build your network, it'll be 10% of that to be able to join the DBU utility.
Okay,
That helps offset our insurance costs, network operator costs, all that kind of stuff.
okay,
We're not looking to take on the whole state next week because we got plenty to do. But
okay.
the point is that I think that, it could be to the advantage of a lot of towns to leverage the fact that we've done what we've done so far.
Mhm.
Certainly is a conversation, and you may want to start your own and then branch out that direction. But I would stick municipal. As you can tell, I'm probably in favor of it. Not enough to move
Thanks
to
so much.
Callis yet, but one thing I'll say for myself though, I started this, like I said, in 2009 for my own little town of Cooper, trying to get decent broadband. And now that Alexander is signed on, the next town connected to Alexander is Cooper. So I'm going to start getting the network here next.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much, Dan.
You're
Thanks
very
so
welcome,
much.
guys. Good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on now to the Lincolnville Broadband Survey.
Okay,
Let me bring it up for everyone. Let's see if I can do this here. One second. I just got a new computer, so I need to grant Zoom access to my screen. There we go. Okay, so we're up to 226 responses. I haven't actually looked at this in a while. We're at 42% DSL, 38% fiber. So that's a nice cross section. Let me just quickly see. Are you satisfied? This is held pretty well. 74% no, 25% yes. Slow speeds, not reliable, high cost. So
About what we thought.
yeah. And then let me share this. This is regarding the survey distribution to students. So we talked about the survey and our committee at our most recent select board meeting on Monday. And the question was asked if the principal could push the survey a little more. And so this is what David told us, that schools willing to provide the students with a paper version, also to send the survey link out. So I'm going to work on making the survey into a 1-page or 1.5-page format for the paper mailer as well as for students. So this is great news.
very good news, yeah.
And then the paper mailer was approved by the Board of Selectmen. So hopefully we'll be getting that out sometime next week. We're going to be doing EDDM, so every day delivery mailer. It means that we'll be going to some addresses in Northport, but the first 2 questions ask, are you a resident of Lincolnville and what's your address? So if any of them have a Northport address, we just toss them. Any questions about the survey?
And so when the written survey goes out, I assume you're going to also push them back to the town website to do it online if they can, just to save us having to collate all this later. So basically, they could do it either way, but
Yeah, have the link printed. Thanks for saying that, because I might have forgotten. Have it printed at the top. Here's the link. And I made a tiny URL for it. It's like tinyurl.com/broadband survey or something. So
yeah,
it's
I would be real clear. You got 2 choices. You can fill this out and get it back, or go online.
Yeah.
Stephen, did you want to say something?
Well, that was my question was, do you need volunteers to help go through all this stuff?
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah. So what we talked about was let the paper mailer run for 2 to 3 weeks, and then after that start compiling them. And I'm sort of viewing this is my idea, we can do something entirely different, but like a socially distant input meeting at the town office where each person could take a room with a computer logged into the survey. And then, we input the paper surveys and they don't leave the town office. So it sounds fun to me, frankly. Who knows how many.
Especially if we can get the general store to provide pizza.
That would be nice.
Yeah, we should ask them. Okay, so that brings me to the next agenda item, which is discussion about the deadline for a report to the select board. The select board wanted to know when we thought we could issue the report and wrap up our work. And so thought we should have that conversation here.
Sounds like it's going to be longer than we expected.
Can you run through the timeline again, Josh? You said that the hard copy is 3 weeks.
That's yeah. So okay. So let's say I've got a calendar open right now. Let's say we could send it out next week at some point. Let's say on Wednesday, just for example. And then let's count 3 weeks after Wednesday. So it's either 7th, the 14th, the 21st. So let's say we spent, so the 21st, we've now, we're done collecting survey results. How long do we think we would need to input them? A week, 2 days? I mean, maybe, I guess it all depends how many we get. Let's say a week. I'm just sort of spitballing here. So now it's the 28th, everything's imported. Now, at this point, I would want to send the raw spreadsheet out to all of you, and we can, do a deep dive into the numbers and sort of figure out what we have there. At its most basic, once everything is, let me bring back the survey. Once everything is in Google Forms, this is automatic. This automatically spits out. So this doesn't take any work once it's in the survey, but I think we could find a lot of interesting trends by going through the raw data. I don't know what exactly, and I don't know how much time we'd want to spend doing that. What does the committee think?
Well, I have a question that may seem strange, but just because of the situation with the select board, does it make sense to wait till after December 15th? Isn't that when the special election is to fill the seat? I mean, do we want to make a presentation to an incomplete select board? I don't know if that seems like a silly question to ask, but if it's a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, should we just wait? Because the makeup of the board may look completely different afterwards.
When we make a recommendation, I don't see this as something where the selectmen are going to act on at the next meeting. Because whatever we recommend is going to have a lot of analysis, and there's going to be a whole nother phase that comes in behind it. So I think we should just do our work, deliberately. I mean, if you're going with the schedule, Josh, that you just talked about, if the survey is done by the end of October, and I see the survey as useful, and I see the survey as very useful for alerting the townspeople to the work that we're doing. But my sense is that we are becoming increasingly knowledgeable, and we already have a real clear sense of what's going on here. But we're going to need November and December to come up with a really good plan at a minimum. So I would think it would be, early part of the year, maybe January, where we could target to get an initial set of recommendations.
Will
But
the
I
board
don't think that's going to be the end of our work, but we'll
would the
see.
board be happy? Would they be happy with that kind of a delay?
I don't think so. No.
Either.
They want it faster.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
would-
feeling I got.
Now, if we're going to talk political here, half the board is in this meeting. So, it's a it's a 4-person board right now.
And I'm interested in running for that seat, and then you'll have 3.
There you go. The top row here, yeah.
So,
We're slower than the selectmen wanted us to be, but I think it's really crucial that we take this time and really go through it thoroughly and go with this broadband conclusion that we're coming to. It's just too important.
well, the members of the board made it clear they didn't want us to rush. They wanted us to give them a realistic timeline where we felt like we could issue a report that was well thought out.
Well, I think, go ahead. I'm sorry, Josh. Go
So I
ahead,
guess
please.
the big question is, how many weeks do we want to analyze the data and write the report? Let's just start with that question.
Sure.
Because I don't know what is everyone's sense of how much time that should take.
Well, I don't think it should take
2
too
weeks?
long. Yeah.
Somewhere between 2 weeks and a
2 or
month.
3 weeks. I don't think it'll take too long because
2 weeks.
the way I see it, and what I think the board might be happy with and would work for a group doing what we want to do, which is work on the bigger picture, is to give kind of like a not to call it a preliminary report, but to give what would be a preliminary report just based on the charge. So it'd be very kind of cut and dried.
Keep in mind,
And-
this isn't, okay, just keep in mind though, this is an ad hoc committee, and my sense of the other board members is that once we issue our report, they want to disband this ad hoc committee.
Okay.
So,
Well, if
this is not a standing committee, and I
Sure,
frankly
sure.
think we have much more work to do, but in terms of the current charge, once we issue the report, our work is done.
Well,
Well,
can
as-
I just make one comment, about the content of the report?
Yeah.
In terms of how much work it's going to take to prepare it. If all we are talking about is an annotated discussion of the survey, that's one thing. If, on the other hand, we're talking about a going forward recommendations and game plan and strategy, which, by the way, includes, our recommendation about how we're in it for the long haul, and all of our information is that it's a multi-year process. Nobody's done it in less than 4. And
Right.
unless you have people who are on the case, doggedly pursuing this, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I personally would like to see come out of this is a going forward plan that includes our recommendations for the Board of Selectmen to say yay or nay to, not just the results of the survey, which, by the way, as we all know, the survey itself is not only useful for the Board of Selectmen, but all the research that we have in this broadband conference I was just in for the last 2 days emphasized. You have to have at least 50% of a response rate. The higher the response rate and the more robust your survey technique, the more credibility you have with everyone from bankers on down. So there are actually going to be several constituencies for this survey data. So on the one hand, we need to make sure that what we get is a large enough sample. Then we have to annotate it and narrate it properly. And then we have to agree on our going forward plan, which, unless anyone disagrees, I think should all be in one document.
I think that's vastly beyond what our charge is.
Well, here's
And
the
I also
charge
think-
right in front of us.
Yeah.
It's good to see it.
we don't have to agree on it, but this is it. And so, number 9 is basically the report. It's pretty broad.
I think it also depends, maybe during this meeting, we have to kind of survey ourselves. I mean, if we're already on the same page or mostly there. I mean, for myself, I obviously am very impressed by the whole municipal approach, but I still have a lot of research I want to do. But if we were kind of all were somewhat in that bucket, then it seems like we could come up with the recommendations sooner
Well, I
than
mean,
later. If we were
I-
divided, it might take longer.
It seems to me that we have a step process here. And I think that the next step is going to be finding some money to go ahead and hire a consultant. And it seems to me that if we, and I may be reading this completely wrong, but it seems to me that something small and incremental in terms of a positive recommendation to take action to begin the process of hiring a consultant is a recommendation that can be driven off of the survey. I think that what Steve is thinking about is something that's much more digested that you're not going to be able to put together in a couple of weeks because it involves an immense amount of stuff. I mean, I know that you're pumped, Steve, from coming back from the conference, but I think that the step here should be, let's spend some money to get a consultant. We are impressed with the municipal approach. We've got extensive concern about the present status of working with Lincolnville. Let's move ahead and get that, take the next step. And it seems to me that it's when you have a consultant in hand that a lot of the detailed work that you're talking about, Steve, unless I'm misunderstanding it, would come into place.
Well, my question is, to whom does the consultant report, assuming that this committee is disbanded on December 15th?
To the Board of Selectmen.
And do you believe the Board of Selectmen will have the technical expertise, the time, the passion to then continue the work that this committee is doing going forward?
But then they have this committee available to them if they want to do that.
Well, they're disbanding the committee most likely.
But
Well,
Steve, we could recommend a standing committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or they could just,
I think we need
bring
to.
us right back.
Well, because my point simply is, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, George. It is a big agenda, and there's a huge amount of work that has to be done. And my sense is that in what you guys have done much more research and have been at this far longer than I have. But even in the tiny bit that I've learned, this is a long game, and it requires people who develop expertise, develop the confidence of the community, and stay in it for the long haul. So if I listened at the same selectmen meeting that Josh was referring to, and my sense also was that they intend to disband the committee. And therefore, the person or the entity to whom the consultant would report and all the next steps would unfold would either be a renewed charter for this committee, which or something like it. But there needs to be some standing committee to continue this work, because frankly, what's been done so far is the tip of the iceberg. This is the easy part.
Oh, I think we all agree with that.
That's what I'm seeing, yeah.
Yeah. But, this was a very, the scope of this charge, was very limited. So I do think that, well, the hope is that we would have enough votes to have a standing committee and see this through.
Have people given more thought to the other thing that would expedite this? If the committee felt positive about joining in with Camden and Rockport, that process is already further ahead, and that would make our recommendation easier. But I know there's some people in town who don't want to have anything to do with those two towns. I don't have that. I don't share that at all. But I get that that's real, but that doesn't stop me wanting to go that route. So if we explored that more and that was available, it seems like that could make our job a little bit easier, because it would be a suggestion of, as George says, that we want to move beyond the situation that we're in. We want to have more control. We're interested in the municipal situation, but there's a lot more to study. We want to tag along with Rockport and Camden as they do their study. They've already hired for Cheryl and Steve last week, or whenever it was, a couple of weeks ago, we talked to their leader, the Rockport Selectman Deborah, and they are ready to hire someone right now to get going on analyzing, doing this in their town. So that would be a way to accelerate the process and to make our recommendations simpler. Are there,
I guess
are there folks that are concerned about joining up with them?
I don't think it's about concern
bother
with
me.
joining up with anyone. I just think that it's about making a concise recommendation to the board so that we can further this. And I think the more convoluted we make it, it's going to just make things harder.
I think that's right. I guess the question you have to ask is, what's the biggest recommendation that can be digested comfortably by the selectmen? It strikes me that we're talking about a couple of pages here, and not an extensive analysis, but maybe I'm going down the wrong avenue on that.
I think that really the report should break down the survey. This is what your community, these are the thoughts of your community. Our recommendation is we hire a consultant to look at this further. Honestly, we need to look at our audience. If the audience is a select board, and if you say, we recommend we join up with Camden and Rockport, you're going to piss off two people.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be frank. So,
Well, and what Steven said, I think, is perfect, because what it does is that it creates an umbrella of the situation. And in one hand, it informs, and on the other hand, it shows them the scale of the project, so that it's not something that's just simple, that there is just a plethora of, in a way that we have to approach this. So I feel like information and scope are the two most important things, because as Josh said, and as the demeanor of the selectmen is shown, and even the charter, this wasn't meant for a grandiose foray. This was made by people, and this isn't as an insult, who didn't understand the desperation of the citizens in this situation. I don't think that the select board really understands, outside the two of you, how bad the situation is for most of the town. And that's not meant in any disrespect, but it's apparent in their tone and demeanor when this is brought up. And so I believe that if we can convey to them the seriousness of it and the scope, and that opens the door for us to move further in the future with their blessing, I think that is the approach, if that makes any sense.
okay, with all that said, how long do we want? Because that's the answer that I need.
Well, I was just going to say, I loved the way you put it, Josh. And and I also agreed with George about it. We're talking about a 2 or 3 page thing. So, and we want it to be something easy to say yes to. So if that's what we're talking about, there's no reason we can't be done by November 15th if we had our, within 2 weeks after having had the October, whatever it was, 28th meeting. And I would just suggest that we add a third piece to what you just said, which is there's the annotation of the data, or the or the comment on the data. There's the recommendation for the consultant. And then I think there should be a recommendation that the select board considers a standing board, a standing committee,
Okay.
who would pursue this further for the myriad questions, and likely to be many months, if not years, that will be going through this, including who would be the client, if you will, of the consultant, to whom the consultant reports.
That makes perfect sense to me.
In accord.
I agree.
Yeah, and that only, and
Right.
I mean, I don't know if anyone disagrees, but I don't see why we couldn't do that by November 15th. I mean, certainly before Thanksgiving.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
the select board meets November 9th and the 23rd. So I would choose one of those days.
I'll go for the 23rd.
Okay,
Get on the agenda on the 23rd. I think you're
Okay.
set. You're all set.
Sounds good.
that sounds good. Okay, so at our next select board meeting, I will say that, and we'll have the charge adjusted. I mean, it's a minor paperwork thing, but okay. November 20th, we will issue the report. Great. Okay. I mean, we don't really need to debate the contents of that report anymore, because we don't, we're not there yet. But I think this has been a good discussion about it.
Yeah.
Certainly. Anything else about the report? Okay.
No, I'm sure
This isn't necessarily about the report, but I'm just wondering what other people are thinking. Is there any push from this group to recommend some form of negotiation with LCI as to quality and service and quickness by which they bring fiber optic, or are people pretty much looking at that's not where we're going to be going? Because I could see one scenario where we give LCI one last chance to get their act
Sure.
together, and if not, we're going down the road that we're going
Yeah.
down.
You know,
I don't think so.
Can I say something about
Yes, please.
LCI? I have had many dealings with them with my home, as well as I was doing consulting for a local business. And they are beyond working with. Not only when I built a new home here in Lincolnville 2 years ago, we had a cottage here in Lincolnville that had TV, internet, phone, everything. So when we built the house, we put in the Cat5 cable, we put in all the cables underground, spent a lot of money. And come to find out, I call Lincolnville telephone and they tell me that no longer are they providing television over Cat5 cable. So, but they're not giving me fiber optic, so I have no TV.
Jesus.
I can just tell you, they have, over time, I work with them, working with the business as well. And I literally had to tell them what to do. So I don't have any hope for them.
We also
Yeah.
have no leverage as a
Hmm?
town.
Well, the leverage is we're going to go do our own system. But I agree with you. I think it's hopeless. I just was curious.
Well,
what
they
people
don't
thought.
have the
I don't think
capability.
they have the
That's
capabilities.
yeah.
I don't think they have the mental.
Well,
No.
also a quick example, for the third time now, and this is after they've rudely hung up on me and my wife, they've asked us if we want fiber optic service after I've delivered them everyone on our road, saying that. And so they keep no files, they keep no records. They don't know when you complain, when you don't.
Right.
And so exactly I mean, if they made a spectacular offer, I'd listen. But what is the point of going back when they time and time again in every situation show that they just don't care?
And Jordan, I have to agree with you. When they set up our internet in this house, they brought in this thing that looked like something from 1980. And I said, what is that? Oh, that's your modem. And it also had some kind of wireless, router as well. So they put it in and it literally did not leave the room that they put it in. There was only internet service wireless in the room. And they said, oh no, this is wonderful. It should work. So I brought it back to them and I literally gave them their $150 piece of equipment, took back a $20 modem from them, told them I didn't care about the money, and then went and spent $300 on routers and all kinds of things to get it to work in my house. So they don't care.
Okay, well, yeah, well, I think when it comes to the report, we'll get into this in more detail. But I'm going to bring up an unpopular dissenting opinion about Lincolnville Telephone. And that is, it's never a bad idea to give somebody a chance for a conversation. And to list it as one more option, say, hey, we're going to give you guys one more chance. One option that the Board of Selectmen might want to hear is talking with Lincolnville Telephone and seeing what they have to offer.
And we can tie in the fact that their franchise agreement is, lapsed.
Well, that's their cable television franchise agreement.
You can try. I just think it's
Exactly.
trying to communicate with people who do not speak the same language.
I agree with you there, and I agree with all of the bad stories about Lincolnville Telephone Company. But as far as giving options to the select board, I think that should be one of the options. Talk with the LCI, see what they can do for us.
Do we have an offer from them? Some sort of, I remember reading something about they were going to provide X amount of service for X amount of dollars.
Yeah, let me bring that up right now. Hold on one second.
Yeah, it is one of the options. Yeah, they initiated the conversation. We are here largely because the LCI approached the select board back in November of last year. and with some options to work with the town. And so the Board of Selectmen then created this committee. So that's one of the options still on the table.
But
Yeah, so basically, this, the funding mix that, 4 years of them spending their money plus $25,000 from a Connect Main grant. They would do it in 4 years, or in 2 years if the town wanted to, pay $95,000, then they could do it in 2 years. And so, yeah, this is actually what pushed to get this committee started.
Yeah. I mean,
this is pre-pandemic. Keep that in mind, plus the charge as well.
Yeah.
Gerald, there's also a video presentation that LCI did that can be made available to you. It's helpful to watch it.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
But in essence, what it really is that we procure public funds for them, and that they would extend the same exact service that they're providing now in 2 years.
Right. Either public funds or manpower, human power to knock on doors and get contracts signed, basically.
Yeah.
In order to get public funds.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Jordan. I think it's a bad deal to work with LCI.
Well, it's
but I
just
think
we have engaged with them, and they've made their stance very clear. I mean,
no, but I think it's a good idea to say to the select board, whoever they may be, that going and talking with LCI is one of your options.
well, that's not the opposite of my recommendation. I will just make that
Well,
clear.
I would not recommend that. I would say that's an option you guys could consider.
But that's what I'm saying. That is not something I would bring up. To me, it is absolutely not an option.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
I
I think what we're
didn't
doing
mean
is
to suggest-
conflating options and recommendations. They're two very different things.
Okay,
But that's what I'm saying. I would not even entertain that as an option, nor would I recommend even considering it, because again, they've presented to us multiple times. Their presentation is a carbon copy. It's not going to change. It's a corporate presentation. So I don't feel comfortable presenting anything having to do with LCI as any kind of option in the report or to the select board at all. I'm totally against it at this point.
I would have to say that we could say it was an option, but this is why we don't recommend it and have A, B, and C as reasons why we don't. But yes, it's an option, but there are definitely.
I think it's hard to ignore.
not
It's
to-
hard to, it's hard to ignore, right? I mean, I think let's be politic about what we want to do here. I think we want to satisfy our charge. And if our charge was initiated by this proposal from Lincolnville, LCI, then it seems to me we should at least allude to it in some way. I understand your desire to not go in that direction, but I think in order to make a more convincing presentation and maybe get what we want, it may not be a bad idea to at least allude to the fact that it's out there.
Stephen, yep.
I think all of us, I'm sure everyone on this call, I can already tell, gets excited about LCI, and I certainly am on that bandwagon. But there's no question that over the next months and years, they will be part of the conversation. That is a given. I don't know that at this time, going back to what Josh and George were saying about what we owe the Board of Selectmen on November 23rd, I don't know that we need to open this can of worms right this minute. If we wanted to talk about all of the things, for instance, we could even come up with an illustrative list of the topics that a standing committee will have to consider over the coming months and years, which would include everything from technology to financing to equal access, and certainly would also include relationships with incumbent providers. There's a long list of things that are going to have to be done. All we're saying at the next meeting, to keep it as simple as possible, is we're just saying three things. We're just saying, here's what the study says, the survey says. We're recommending a consultant, of which we already know of several whose names are in the hopper, so we kind of have a jump on that, including, by the way, ones that are in neighboring communities. And we have learned that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and it's going to take a lot of continuing effort. And unless the Board of Selectmen itself wants to spend hundreds of hours on this one issue,
Mhm.
we recommend a standing committee be created to shepherd this through. And
Yeah.
the standing, and that's all we would say on November
Yeah.
23rd.
Okay.
Yep, that's well said.
And like you said, everything else will come to fruition later as part of the natural process.
That's
So
right.
Josh, I think Steve said it well. I'm kind of thinking, why do we need to wait till November 23rd to say what was just said?
Well, I think we should, well, the board wants to hear what the survey says. They
Right.
want the survey digested. They want, I mean, we want to give the survey a fair shake, right? We have 224 responses. It's people that have access to the Lincolnville Bulletin Board and Facebook and some flyers. You know, we want a fair cross section. But I agree that it seems like a foregone conclusion. Stephen, I really love how you just distilled it down to those 3 points. I agree, but I think we still need to go through the survey and, you know, hand that data over.
Just as a point of information, how many households live in Lincolnville, Maine?
My understanding is it's 1,600 roughly.
Because to me, it's what's really super important is that we get at least 50% response.
We're not going to get it.
Nowhere near it.
How does
Yeah.
anyone
Well,
get that much?
Steven, well, just to let you know, the last average tally of voters was around 765 votes per referendum per issue in the last vote in Lincolnville. So that's how many people vote for important issues. So that should give you some kind of a look into, you know, percentages. So if there's that many, you know what I mean? It's
Well, no, I hear you. So I'm not asking for the population of the town. I'm asking for number of households, because it's households that buy cable or fiber. And also, whatever the answer is going to be, we're going to have to explain why our number is a good number going down the road. In other words, we're going to have to make the case to a grantor like Connect ME or Island Institute, for whom this is the first question. Do you have community support? We're going to have to make the case to a bank. Do you have community support? Do you have community support is really the starting point that I've heard from everyone. And I just want to make sure we're armed as well as we can be to answer that question as persuasively as we can.
Keep in mind, the survey does not directly ask, do you support a municipally, you know, funded or backed broadband? That was explicitly, you know, what the select board did not want included. So,
Well, right now we have what, 3/4 of the respondents who would probably say, yes, something should be changed.
yeah.
And I guess we'll know once we've gone through the next effort in terms of soliciting more responses, how many we're going to get.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're going to get 50%. You know, that's part of the problem that we've been wrestling with for a while, is that if you have an incumbent system and 25% of the people are happy with it, you know, it's going to be hard to get 50%, right? In terms of being able, at least in terms of a survey, right? Because
When
what the
you,
survey is going to tell us is
but
that
we want to
3/4
get
of-
as close as possible to it, even if
Yeah.
it's difficult.
There's,
I mean,
there's not, I don't think there's 1,600 households. When I asked David Kinney that question, he thought it was about 1,000. And when I Googled that question, it said 904 from some 2017 data. So you know, those are not hard numbers, but I don't think it's as big as we're talking about.
I guess I got 1,600 from LCI's data.
I think that's the population of Lincolnville.
It's 2,100, I believe.
Oh, is the population? Like I know that in Islesboro, that was based on 800 households.
Okay.
So they're $360 per year for 1 gigabit symmetrical service that I imagine you guys know they have, is what they have.
presented to us. They've presented to us, Steve.
Okay, so they told me that they have 800, and then the person who said to me 50%, Brian Lippold, who you guys may also know.
Yeah, we talked to him as well.
Brian said that the Island Institute can give a grant, but I recommend that there be a 50% community-owned backing,
Right.
a community support backing.
He was talking about 50% of the cost,
He
I
was talking
think.
money.
Yeah, he was talking dollars. I mean,
Oh.
David's had that conversation.
Sure.
All right. Well, I mean, if everyone is, I mean, obviously, I think we all agree we should do the best job we can. We're going to send it to the schools. Josh, you've already got all that going, so we'll have what we have, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Let's move on. Number 7, action items. So I am going to make it a paper copy that's 1.5 pages, because that's what it needs to fit on. We will send that out. Are there any other action items for the committee?
So when do you need our help, Josh, when it comes back in? Does the town send it out? You don't have to do it, right? Some service does it, or does the staff do it? Or
Exactly. They simply drop off these 1-pagers to the post office, fold it up, and the post office sends them off. It's
Okay.
the nice thing about EDDM. And then, yeah, once we get all the results back, then we'll obviously have a big work party. Let's see. Do we want to meet before we get the results back? Do we have anything else to talk? I mean, we had a lot to talk about tonight. Do we have anything else we want to be talking about before we get them back, though?
I don't think we need to wait to get that back. I mean, that's good stuff and we're going to learn more from it, but I would just keep going on the normal schedule to do our job.
Okay, so do we want to meet in 2 weeks then?
Sounds good.
Can I ask one question about normal job? Is on your work stream, are you already talking to or interviewing consultants?
We have.
Well, we talked to Brian from Castle Bay Advisors. That's the only consultant we've spoken with. Yeah, we're not empowered to, I guess. Well, we're not empowered to hire anyone, obviously.
Okay.
Okay.
So would that be the 8th?
The 8th?
Yeah, that is Thursday, October 8th,
Josh,
7 p.m.
the question I would ask in terms of what we're doing next, I mean, we've been getting a lot of good information from talking to people like Dan.
Yeah.
And I think we could learn more and more by doing that. But the more time we spend doing that, the more time we're losing to put together the report as articulated by Steve. I mean, do we want to keep reaching out to people to get more information, or is the committee kind of ready to get to work, having some of the discussion that we've had tonight and to kind of finish up that discussion?
I would
I'm ready
concur
to
that,
roll my sleeves up.
yeah, I think
Sorry,
that
Jim.
maybe people should be thinking about an outline for the, for the presentation. I mean,
agree.
of course, it exists beautifully in a platonic sense in Steve's head. But I think it's something we could, all give some thought to. I think we have the elements. And in terms of crafting it, it shouldn't, be that difficult.
Okay.
But-
Yeah, so why don't we all come to the next meeting with an idea of what we'd like to see in the report and have a long discussion about it.
So maybe we could actually come out of the next meeting with a bullet point, a set of bullet points for the report. That would be a nice goal, assuming that we then have the information from the survey, and we could just staple one to the other once they're together and have done the analysis.
Oh,
That's
And
too
then we
cute.
And we could also decide, beyond sharing the survey, sharing, the outline that Steve put out, we could also decide next time, are we going to put any analysis in this, more kind of share what we've learned from other communities, or whether we're just going to stay away from that.
Yeah, okay. There is a member of the Belfast Broadband Committee that would like to come talk to us. Should I invite him? He's the individual that sent us all those emails with lots of great information.
I think that would be super interesting. And quite frankly, I would love to, I mean, you guys may have already done this. I'm very much Johnny come lately, but if Camden or Rockport have anybody who is open to talking to us, I would love to learn whatever they're doing.
We invited Deborah Hall from the Camden Rockport Broadband Task Force, I think, to our last meeting. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
you can
Steve,
just
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was going to, Steve, if
She
you,
was great.
if you have time, those meetings are you can watch them on YouTube.
I will definitely. What do I have to look up? Just the Lincolnville Broadband Committee?
Town of Lincolnville has a channel, and
Okay.
so all of the public meetings are posted there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mike.
Yeah, no, that's what I was just gonna say the same thing. Yeah, just go there, and it's gonna take a while, but you can go all the way back to the November 15th broad meeting with the selectmen that initiated this whole thing as well.
And Steve, it's in the Facebook fiber optic group. All of those links that I provided go back to the Town of Lincolnville site, like YouTube page, if that's easier for you.
Great. Yeah, Cheryl?
I just wanted to know, Jordan, on that site, you said there's links to the meeting videos or?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the Town of Lincolnville site?
No, on the Lincolnville Citizens for Fiber Optic. It's a Facebook group.
Oh, got it.
So there's all links and stuff for there too. So
Got it. Okay, great. Any non-agenda items?
No, but did I hear that you are gonna invite the Belfast person? Which would be
Yes.
great.
Yep,
Oh, good.
I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
well, I just wanted to say I'm very glad that both Cheryl and Stephen made it onto the committee. It took a little bit, but I really am very,
Thanks for
very
joining.
happy that you guys are here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like the Supreme Court.
That's right.
Now,
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
I second that.
And that-
Great. Any discussion? All right. I'm going to go down the line. David, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Gina?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And I vote yes too. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Hey,
you.
good night.
Have a great night,
Good
everyone.
night.
See you later.
Night.
Good night.
Time to leave. See you meeting.